Russ Vought, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You bet. It's great to have you on. Yesterday was a tough day. Do you know, has the president had his phone call yet? Are they coming back together?
Well, I think the president made some comments to the press this morning that he's not looking to have a phone call anytime soon. But I think he expressed
Oh,
disappointment yesterday with regard to
yeah.
some of the comments made by Elon. But look, Glenn, we're moving forward, and Elon's been an important ally and patriot throughout all of this, and we've got a job to do, and I think that's where we're most focused right now is making sure we can get the word out on this bill, get it across the finish line, make improvements where we can, but get this thing home for the American people.
So I agree with both the president and Elon Musk. I know that there are things in this package that are really important, and I know, I think the president understands it, and Elon doesn't understand that, politics are involved here. And I don't know why Elon wasn't going after the Democrats and saying, why don't you care some more? Come on, help us. But the president is now putting in a rescission package. What does that mean, and what is that going to do to this bill?
Well, again, two things I would say. And just going back to your kind of initial comment there, I think that the argument that the fiscal challenges of the country are so bad and we need to do as much as we can, I think there's alignment. There is a total agreement. I think the issue is how
Right.
much, and this gets to your second part, how much this bill, this is not a budget bill. People get confused because they think it uses a budget process. It is an agenda bill that uses a budget process. It's not a budget resolution. It doesn't give you a comprehensive fiscal picture. It cannot, by law, include cuts to discretionary spending, which are all the DOGE permanent cuts, right? So that is something that has to be considered elsewhere, and we are in the process of doing that. So we just sent up our first rescissions bill. We will send up more. This one is $9.4 billion. Why is it so small? It's small specifically because of the politics that you mentioned, which is that Congress hasn't passed these bills, and we can do a lot of things ourselves that we don't need Congress. But procedurally, and this is where you have new people come into the party and the coalition, they don't know the procedures of government. If Congress doesn't pass a rescissions bill, we lose the ability to just not spend the money and to use some of our tools that this president is now talking about that we are polishing off that haven't been used since the 1970s to just not spend the money. And so we have this whole side of effort on discretionary spending, making the DOGE cuts permanent. There's a lot of different ways to do that. We're in the process of doing that. That is another piece of the puzzle fiscally that you would not get from this reconciliation bill.
So because Russ, I know you know this, and I'm an infant compared to the way your understanding is. So please help me understand. But we are up against the wall with a gun to our head when it comes to printing more money or borrowing more money, and we've got to cut this budget. Can you explain to the audience why we have to be careful on this? We can't just go in, and maybe I'm seeing this wrong, but I don't think we can go in and just take an axe to everything until we get the economy to light the match in the economy. Am I wrong on this?
I don't think you're wrong. I think we can do both, but I think for people, I think it's why the bill is so important. So you cannot have a conversation about reducing debt and deficits when the economy is not going. Period. End of story. It is vital foundation. Does economic growth get you all of the way to where we need to go? No, it does not. But the notion that you're ever going to reform these big programs like that are welfare and the social safety net without a growing economy, you can't impose a work requirement when there are no jobs. So this bill, and this is where our main thing that we're trying to correct factually, if you adjust for CBO's artificial baseline that assumes tax relief will expire, they don't assume that. They assume spending is eternal. So Green New Deal is, and spending through that is assumed to continue, or the appropriations process, all the woke and weaponized bureaucracy, all of that. But if you have tax components, all of those are presumed to sunset, right? So that is a fundamental. We've known this for decades. The way that DC screws and misassesses our bills. So you've got to pass this, otherwise we're going to have a recession. That said, this bill actually cuts spending. It has $1.7 trillion in savings, reduces the deficit by $1.4 trillion. It is the biggest mandatory savings proposal in history. In the 1997s, we were only talking with the work requirements and Bill Clinton and the Republican Newt Gingrich's House. We were talking about $800 billion in savings. Has the problem gotten worse? Yes, it has, but this is historic levels, and that's not even talking about the DOGE cuts. And so I think we can do all of them, but we've got to kind of figure, what's this bill doing? What's the maximum that we can do it? The art of the possible is a 3-seat majority in the House and the Senate. We are willing to go further, but we also know the bill has to pass, and those are small majorities. This is not 20-seat majorities, and that's a real political constraint that you reflected earlier. But I'm very bullish, Glenn. I think at the end of this year, if this bill passes and the cuts are maintained in it, we can end the year with a paradigm shift on mandatory spending and a paradigm shift on discretionary. We might have the first chance to actually cut non-defense spending by serious levels through the ability to just not spend money or to send up rescissions that don't need a congressional affirmative vote on through pocket rescissions. Okay, so that would dramatically change. And here's the thing. It would lead to results. What has caused the problem we have is fiscal futility. We don't only get any wins, let alone big wins. This is giving us big wins, and I think it's why we're going to be able to change the trajectory this year.
The argument against that is it's raising the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. So why do you say we can raise the debt ceiling, add another $4 trillion in debt, and yet at the end have a big win by the end of the year? What is in this bill that is not connecting here?
So any bill that you would have ever had, your Republican Study Committee budget, Rand Paul's budget, whatever, no matter what bill you cut cap and balance from yesteryear, any of those bills act over a 10-year period. And so over that 10-year period, you're getting to these low balance levels, right? In the immediate, all of them assume that in the short term, the debt is going up while you make progress. And so the debt limit, the debt ceiling, is a warning sign. It itself does not create debt. Now, it is something that historically has been used. The president has views, and we agree that, we haven't gotten anything out of the debt limit in 20, 30 years. And so the notion that it should be done outside of reconciliation and Republican votes is something that we have been challenging as an administration. It's just this is not serving our interest. This bill extends the debt limit, but it does include if you ever historically got anything from the debt limit extension, it would be what is already in this bill, and that's why we're so excited about this bill.
I saw something from Goldman Sachs last week, and they said we are dangerously close to not being able to sell our debt, and then having to finance ourselves and raise the interest that we're having to pay. Do you have any idea how close we are to that number before this thing? Because I think we're just really on the edge here. Where is that number? How close are we?
I don't think anyone really knows, and I don't think you can ever know. And I think the fiscal storm clouds have been with us for a long time, and we obviously see the extent to which it's a problem. No one is arguing back against that, and no one's arguing that back to the critics of debt and deficit at all. But I think what I would push back a little bit, and I'll add Moody's to the list as well, is that the meta point is true. It's also one that you've been making for 20 years, and the conservative movement's been making. This president's been making. The point is true. The timing of these analyses I think are for a purpose. And so Moody's could have made that determination 15 years ago in the Obama administration. They chose not to. They chose to do it right before House passage on an agenda bill that has incredible importance to the American people. And I think the president's getting Liz Truss in that vein. And the notion that Goldman Sachs doesn't have a sense about the way the baselines work and the watchdogs is also not true. And so I think what you have going on here is the reality of our fiscal situation and people continuing to rightfully educate on that. But I think in the financial community or some of the watchdogs, there is a timing aspect that is specifically designed to use the legitimate concerns to take down a bill that is otherwise fantastic on a dishonest basis. And that's one of the reasons we're working so hard to get our message out.
I know your time is really tight. Can you just tell me quickly, what are the things in it specifically that you say are fantastic that maybe people don't know?
I think the biggest thing is the level of welfare reform that's in this bill. The Medicaid reforms, the work requirement in Medicaid to get people back into the workforce, the food stamp reforms, both tightening the work requirement and giving states a share of the cost of that program. $1.7 trillion in mandatory savings. And then the second aspect of it is you talked about the DOGE rescissions. And the only spending in this bill is spending that is specifically designed strategically that is conservative and we would do like border security, right? If that's an appropriations process, we're headed towards a shutdown. It looks like the first term, we can't actually have non-defense fight over cutting because we're fighting for the wall. This bill includes that type of spending so that it clears the field strategically for us to have a massive fight on non-defense spending in the appropriations process. We did talk very rarely about that dynamic, but I think it's one that your audience will find very exciting.
Russ, I so appreciate the fact that you are there with the president. The president has earned the right to get his, we're 120 days or something into his first term. I think he's earned the right to get his way. I am worried about the debt and the deficit, but I do trust you, and I give my support to the president. And I hope that we can get past yesterday and move to get things moving in Washington, because I think if this doesn't pass, I haven't heard a better idea from anybody. I've just heard no's, but I haven't heard a better idea. We've got to get moving on this, or we're in trouble, deeper trouble than we are already in now. Thank you, Russ.
Well said. Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate you.
You bet. Russell Vought, Office of Management and Budget.